All right, so today is the 1st of November 2024. My name is Evan Strong. I am the founder of In The Image Clothing Company, a clothing company that is so much more than just a clothing company. We are called In The Image Clothing Company because we are all universally designed in the image of our living God, who is Jesus Christ. And we discuss the body as it is, as it was before we came into the world and then got altered. Through anything that is man-made, that is flat, when our hands are rounded and our feet have their natural gripped arches to them. And clothing is the only thing placed physically directly on us at all times, so it's the only thing that has the potential to alter our bodies to that degree. There's nothing else that we come in contact with to the extent that we come in contact with clothing because it's placed on us. So anytime it's imbalanced or it's unnatural as far as the materials or anything, then it affects the body, and it does so in a great way. So I've had a couple prerequisites since before I even founded In The Image Clothing Company, just to allow the body to have a chance to operate natural, because that's what we do. We get our bodies back to the way that they were designed, as if we were, out of modesty, like not wearing any clothing, walking in the grass. How would the body operate? And that's what we try to get back to, and we do, to the best of our own personal situations, ability, through In The Image Clothing Company, what we discuss here. So anyway, I'm going to address the noise. I've got no control over this park, but they're leaf blowing the leaves off this path they just made to have a run they're gonna have here in a bit. I don't know if it's today or tomorrow, or probably today or tomorrow. In the video, I'm gonna address this really quick. I made a video just before this one, like 5 minutes before I started this one, if even, is when I stopped that other video, and it's titled something along the lines of the natural center line, and I discussed our body's natural center line. And within that video, I got pretty upset about this guy who was throwing his frisbees like so close to me when I was partially through that video and had already been standing in this exact location for at least 45 minutes before then. I want to address the fact that, yeah, I was very open about how frustrated I got with him, and that it was justified. No matter how entitled I sounded, I'd go watch it if you'd like to. But right after I stopped that video, like immediately after, two women walked across the sidewalk right here and behind my camera quietly, and they apologized as if making sure that I knew that they didn't want to interrupt my video. And so that's just the difference with the way that guy's behavior was. I don't care how entitled I sound or how upset or how big of a deal it seems like I'm making out of something. Go watch the video if you want to. I just thought it was absurd. The point being, there's just so many fields around here, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then that big one over there, and the rest of this one. And the dude was right next to me after I was part of the way through the video. So I just want to address that. Shout out to those super kind women who weren't even in the frame and didn't make any noise, and they apologized. When they didn't need to. Because anyone can do whatever they want at this park, but when you have that much free space, and I was obviously already doing this right here, I do not own this park, and I have no kind of authority over it, but the consideration just was not there. So I'm gonna make it very clear, no matter how that sounds to anybody who's hearing me say that. Okay, so anyway, within this video, I'm going to discuss stretchy clothing, because I actually haven't made a video about stretchy clothing yet, like just specifically geared around stretchy clothing. I always mention how we should ideally stay within 100% natural materials, but stretchy clothing isn't something I've made a specific video about until this one. So yeah, when I didn't finish discussing the prerequisites because I mentioned my whole experience with Mr. Frisbee Man in that other video. So the prerequisites, just to allow the body to have a chance to operate natural, are to lace your shoes with the technique that is In The Image Clothing Company's shoelacing and tying technique. You can find that where you find us online. Our official domain is InTheImageClothingCompany.com, but if you just look up In The Image Clothing Company, you will be able to find us, being 2024 on the internet. But that lacing technique just includes tying the shoes evenly over toward the inside, The feet have the same amount of bones and ligaments and tendons and muscles within them, and they only work the way that they do. And I have a video for In the Image Clothing Company titled The Natural Walking Gait, where you can go see how that natural position looks. And that's just the only shoelacing technique that allows that to actually happen. Any other shoelacing or tying combination of shoes with traditional eyelets up the sides will alter the feet in some way to some degree. So pairing the shoelacing with removing the tags from all of the clothing that you wear, stemming within the shoes because that will alter the feet's natural workings, but then up through the entirety of all the clothing that you do wear. Tags cause unnatural gaps within clothing only in the locations where the tag is placed, wherever that is in the clothing item. And they're also made out of synthetic man-made materials that alter the body's ability to just be natural, because the body doesn't want to ever have to come in contact with those kind of materials at all. And being placed within clothing, there's no say for like getting away from the material, right? So yeah, removing the tags is the second prerequisite. Okay, so I want to make it very clear, I'm not upset with people for using this field. I do not own this field, but if you do watch that video that I mentioned at the beginning, you will see that guy very intentionally grunting as he's throwing the frisbees, throwing them right next to me when there's just like an unimaginable amount of free grass all around. So anyway, yeah, I have no say over who uses this field, but just it was very intentional on his part, and that's not an opinion. You can watch the video for yourself. So yeah, anyway, wow. Okay, so that's funny. I'm actually really glad how much I'm showing my frustration of that, because it was just absurd. It wasn't even within this video, but anyway, stretchy clothing is a big thing for the body, because the body doesn't want to have to try to deal with something it can't predict. And within clothing that has no stretch or just very, very little give within it, the body can predict how it's going to react. And our bodies are actually very robust. No matter what gender you are, a lot of times males are considered and thought about as more like tough, but really just the human body is just flesh and bones, and it's very durable and tough in a sense, just meaning it doesn't want to have to like deal with these weirdly stretchy materials placed on it, because it would never have to come in contact with that in nature. So what happens if you're wearing a shirt that's stretchy? Actually, this is the only stretchy shirt that I currently own that has any kind of like stretch within it. That's why I'm wearing it within this video. But I might not even take off this button up, just because I don't think it's going to really help much with the visual to have only that shirt on rather than having this over it. But if I decide to take this off throughout the video, that will come if it does. When we sleep within stretchy clothing, when you lay down, the material will kind of like stretch and give away, and your muscles will like not know how to activate as they're trying to battle this material that just doesn't have like a definitive like end point, and it just keeps stretching. And as you breathe, your rib cage is expanding and the material is like moving in an unnatural, weird way, and your muscles are trying to just stay constantly activated, as muscles within the body are until altered. But as they're trying to like accommodate for this weird stretch as your rib cage is moving when you breathe, that's why people are getting so sweaty and hot when they sleep, and why they feel like they can't breathe and just can't get comfortable and feel like they need to use a pillow, which further alters the natural position of the body. We don't need to sleep with pillows, because taking this natural vertical position and placing a pillow alters it. And I've discussed that many times within In the Image Clothing Company videos. So wearing stretchy clothing to sleep is a big one, because you're placing the weight of your body into a bed that already has some give. Ideally, we sleep with something that's decently firm, again, just to allow the body's muscles to stay activated as we sleep. But there's some give within beds, right? We sleep on things that are at least kind of cushiony. But then within that, the stretch of the clothing just totally deactivates your body's muscles, and it changes and alters your breathing patterns just to such a great degree. And that's just sleeping. Now, stretchy clothing in any aspect of life is going to alter your body's workings, just because it's just unpredictable and your muscles can't stay activated. So when it comes to reaching, you'll go to reach and it'll stretch and kind of like drop you. I'm going to discuss this really quick. I talk about so often within the Image Clothing Company videos that human beings, like animals, naturally dwell within internal rotation over external rotation. And people nowadays in 2024 are in such a constant, chronic, until fixed state of external rotation. And a lot of that's due to what people are taking part in the world and the positions that's placing their body into. But a lot of it's due to just imbalances within clothing, because in order to activate the body, you have to get internal toward yourself, toward your center and your core. And I've discussed the core very often within the Image Clothing Company videos. The video I just made right before this that I mentioned at the start, I mentioned the core a lot within that. So I also have my series for the Image Clothing Company titled The Truth Behind, and there's a video titled The Truth Behind the Core within that. So when you're going to reach and your clothing stretches like on your back, it's like deactivating you into external rotation. And I do that like falling back, because that's really what happens, is because of what your clothing up here is doing within the stretch, it actually collapses the arches within your feet, because it deactivates your core, taking your pelvis into a position really anterior that it wouldn't naturally be in. Posterior is where it would naturally be to activate that core, and collapsing your arches because your shirt has stretch up here. So that's just a stretchy shirt, and that's just either sleeping or reaching. But doing anything, because then if you're sitting down, which I have a lot of discussion that I've had on how human beings don't sit in chairs. The human body doesn't actually sit in chairs. You can just plop your body onto a chair, but my hands go out because your body goes into external rotation, because you're sitting on this very large muscle, which is your hamstring, and deactivating it by putting all your weight on where it wants to contract in a chair, somewhere around 90-degree bend in the hips and the knees, and that's deactivating your core and placing your body into a position it doesn't actually work in. And I've gone over that. I have a video for the Image Clothing Company titled The Human Body Doesn't Sit in Chairs. But when we talk about sitting at all, because sitting on the ground is very natural, but if you're leaning against something and your back, the stretchy part of the shirt, like very similar to sleeping, is against something, that just alters the way that you breathe to a great degree. And also, when there's stretch within clothing, after you've been in any kind of position that has stretched the clothing, it kind of stays more stretched in that location rather than the rest of the item of clothing. And that's not something that happens within things that don't have stretch to them. And so now it's just going to be sitting imbalanced on your body because it has stretched. So within pants, even like, I mean, ideally we're not really resting our hands or our arms on our knees, because that's also deactivating your core. Like if you're sitting down and you rest here, it just deactivates all the muscles that are holding your shoulders into their position in your core, and it like takes your pelvis. I mean, if you're sitting in a 90-degree position anyway, that's altering your pelvis's natural position, then that's already happening. But anytime you place anything onto locations of your pants that stretch those locations, the reason I mentioned putting the arms on the legs, like when you're sitting down and you're resting your arms on your legs, is now you're going to stretch the location where your arm was sitting on your leg within the pants. And now as you walk and bend your knees, your knee will bend into the part of the pants that is stretched. And so it's going to change that natural position of the bend of the knee when you walk, if you've stretched it anywhere that isn't just directly where your knee would bend. And that happens. So ideally we never have anything placed within pockets of clothing, because that's just excess weight, first of all. Also, it alters the pelvis's position. Let's say you have something in this pocket, this natural, fully elongated hip flexor position to allow activation of the glutes and the hamstrings and the posterior chain of the body, keeping that core activated, right? That will alter the hip flexor's full range of motion. So what I'm saying though is if you do have things within pockets, it'll stretch the pants if they are stretchy, and then now, like I'm discussing, the hip flexor's elongation will be greater on the side that has stretched because there's just more room for it to stretch, and then that will twist your pelvis and your entire spine, twisting your shoulders and your neck, changing the activation of the arches within your feet because the hips are at the center of your body. So I'm going to mention really quickly where clothing needs to sit on the universal human design, regardless of gender, age, height, anything. Seriously, within the body, regardless, because the body is about its structural skeletal system and just having its natural position, this is where clothing needs to sit to allow that position to just be natural. And within In The Image Clothing Company clothing, when that does come available, as of today's date, we do not have that available, but it will always be made out of 100% natural materials. It will never have any kind of tags protruding from the inside, so that part of the prerequisites won't have to be done within our clothing, and it will just have the intention to allow the body to work. And by doing that, this is where it will sit. This is where all clothing needs to sit, regardless of who you have purchased it from, just to allow your body's skeletal system to be operable, okay, naturally. So pants need to be entirely above the hips, slightly higher in the front than the rear, and that's what's going to allow that naturally, constantly activated core to be there, and those naturally gripped arches to be there with good nails on the toes, stemming from the pelvis down, right, for the feet. And the top seams of the shoulders need to sit behind that little bone that's on the top of the shoulders, and the edge seams should ideally be right at the very edges of the shoulders, just because that's where the shoulders move and rotate and hinge. So the reason I was saying that, well, that's just important to say in everything that you could ever know about In The Image Clothing Company, or just about the human body in general. That's just how you're going to allow your body to operate natural. But I was relating that to having things within the pockets because that stretch will just change the position of your hips. So it's very important to know, again, regardless of who's telling you, whether it's me or anybody else, just where clothing needs to sit for the body to work. But also within stretchy pants, if you do sit down, the reason people's glutes aren't active, the reason there's like this idea that there's a separation between the activation of the glutes and the hamstrings in so many people that can't seem to work as a conjunction together as a body working as a whole the way it naturally does, is if you do sit down, even if you're at a good position, meaning sitting on the ground naturally as the body would do, there was no kind of chairs until human beings created chairs. And if you go back, chairs were always very, very short, or people would just sit on the ground because that's just very natural for the mechanics of the way the body can stay activated. But if you do sit down and your pants are stretchy, it'll, similar to what I was saying with sleeping with the rib cage and the stretchy shirt, the glutes will have the pants stretch like around them, and you'll deactivate your glutes, especially that little glute medius, that little side glute muscle that comes into the hip socket that really opens the hips into a good internal rotation of the leg and posterior tuck of the pelvis by contracting that glute medius, which is on the side. And so if you're sitting on stretchy pants, that glute medius that needs to contract like this the pants will stretch back here, and that contraction of the glute medius will go like this, and your legs will go external, deactivating your core, taking your shoulders external, excessively curving your spine, changing the position of your bite within your teeth, your jaw having one of its natural functions being stabilizing the entire body will then be affected. all because you just have some stretch within your pants. So that's just very basic shirts and pants stretches. But it goes with anything, any kind of undergarment that you do wear that has any kind of stretch in it, or any kind of thing that goes over the shirt that you're wearing directly against you if it has stretch. Because even if you're wearing something directly against you that doesn't have much stretch, but then you're wearing something on top of that does, now those materials are reacting to each other differently, and your entire body is still trying to just deal with the stretch that it does notice within any part of clothing, whether it's against you or on top of something else. So yeah, it doesn't matter what item of clothing it is, if it's anything. I mean, because I don't want to have to mention all the specifics of whatever it could be. The point is, no matter what it is on the body, anywhere that it is placed, if there is stretch, just because the way that muscles contract to activate, as stretchy clothing expands, it weakens your body. It really does. And so a lot of people are having so much fatigue, excessive fatigue. They haven't done things that would have fatigued their body as far as exerting muscle, but people feel like they just don't have the natural amount of energy that they feel that they would. And really the big point with that is, if the entire time that you're wearing something you're like essentially fighting it because it's stretchy, then it's just going to fatigue your muscles because they're trying to like combat that stretch constantly within whatever you're wearing. So that's why it really doesn't matter what location is placed. Anywhere, if the muscles are trying to accommodate for something they can't predict, they're just going to be so overworked, even if there's no motion happening. Like I'm saying, just laying down in a bed, because you're still breathing. Your rib cage is still expanding and contracting no matter what you're doing, because if you were alive, that's what constitutes human life, is breath. That's the thing that we can go the least amount of time without before we die. And death is a part of life, but that's just how it is breath is the essence of life. And you know, we are centered around the gospel of Jesus Christ at In the Image Clothing Company. And in the garden, when God created Adam, the first man, he breathed life into his nostrils. That's where life began, was breath. So it does take the entire body to some degree to breathe, because everything works as a whole, and there's so much stabilization that goes into a full expansion of the rib cage. So anything that has any kind of stretch will just do what it does, no matter where it's located on the body. I know that sounded kind of weird, but really, no matter where it's located on the body, yeah, it doesn't matter, because it's just unnatural. That's the whole point, is getting back to natural. There's nothing that you're going to come in contact with in nature that has stretch. And sure, you can find a plant that has some stretch to it, but I mean, the body would never come in contact with something that it has to like accommodate for the stretch with the way that it could within stretchy clothing. So it's not something that we were designed to have to deal with as just fleshly beings that we are. So it's very, very much altering the natural workings of the body. So yeah, this is another one of those videos that's timeless for In the Image Clothing Company, or for any human ever to live, even if we didn't have a company, just something that everybody could know. I don't want to say needs to know, as if it's like you have to know this information that I am giving, but it's truth. The body doesn't mesh with stretch. It just doesn't. And it's so common for there to be stretch within clothing. Like if I pull on this, you hear that? I know that the mic can pick that up. There's no stretch, or just very, very, very little, if so, because you just have material woven together. It has the potential to have some give, right? But there shouldn't be like stretch and then it comes back to itself. It's just like there might be some play within the fibers that are wound together, but they're just fibers wound together. But this shirt here, this is that stretchy one I was talking about. Like, look at that. So stretchy and springy and just unnatural. So yeah, that's why I wore this shirt, was to make this video. I discussed that at the beginning. It's just unnatural. So yeah, and then also, like I was saying, when you do sit down and it stretches the material where your glutes are, now you have like this excess room within the material as you go through life, only in the location where it has stretched. And then like sensory wise, because the body's sensory throughout the entire exterior of our skin, because the skin's an organ really, and it has nerve endings all over it, and it senses things. And that actually really is when your muscles activate, is when it senses something, right? I mean, our sense of touch is just one of the 5 senses. The point is, if there's nothing within the pants touching against like your glutes as tightly, if you will, as the rest of your legs, because that's now been stretched from sitting on stretchy clothing, then the activation will be less within your glutes than wherever it's going to touch the rest of your legs where it hasn't stretched as much. And so now that's going to just change the sensory activation of your entire lower body and posterior chain especially, which is where all the strength is. The naturally functioning strength of the body is in the rear of the legs. The big muscles, the hamstrings, the glutes, the calves, the quads, as I've discussed many times, naturally, in a naturally functioning human body, do very, very little like functional strength. They stabilize, but the quads should not be doing very much work at all, because the knees bend forward, and it's the hamstrings that keep that activation and the glutes working together. So yeah, stretchy clothing will alter that as well, because if you bend your knees and it stretches where your knee is, that's going to put activation onto your quads where it should not be, and it wouldn't be naturally. So at least to that degree. I mean, the entire body, like I said, should be in an activated state. Muscles should be turned on, but you shouldn't feel the majority of the work in your quads. Just, that's not how the body's set up to work. And I've got videos where I discuss that within my within the Truth Behind series for In the Image Clothing Company. There's a video titled The Truth Behind Push versus Pull, and I go over how the body's actually designed to pull because of the range of motion, because of the internal rotation, rather than push, which is more of an external, even though you can push with an internal rotation. But I've discussed a lot just how the rear of the body is where the natural functional strength really is. And I always say as well, you know, if you get anatomy experts watching In the Image Clothing Company videos that I've personally made, they'll agree with the things that I'm saying. I know that some things that I do discuss here are a little bit abnormal to what people are used to hearing, seem a little bit far-fetched maybe, and my approach to it is so simple because that's all that we actually need, universal truth, that people don't want to believe it because it seems a little bit too simple, but it's truth. So anyway, yeah, we just have this natural position, and we just need to be in it. We just need to allow the body to be in it. That's it. Allow it to do what it was designed to do, because we can't tell it what to do. And I didn't mention this within this video as far as I am aware, but we shouldn't have to stretch. We shouldn't have to work out. The body is designed to do the functions that we need it to do, as long as it's not being restricted. So within stretchy clothing, then you will feel as though you might need to stretch your body, because since the body, like I said, is so robust, meshing that with something that's so give and stretch, like this stretchy shirt here, it's such a clash. And then that makes it so that your body will tense up, and now you feel like you need to stretch, but then it's not going to help you if you continue to wear clothing that is stretchy, because then your body will just continue to try its best to work, but it will be being, like I said, just forced to like almost stiffen up to just try to stabilize within this so unpredictable exterior source. So anyway, that's stretchy clothing. I could probably say quite a lot more about it, but that's the biggest things, is the places where it's going to be stretching it's just going to stretch. I mean, there's not much more to say than that. Once you understand what it's doing, that's just about all you need to know, truthfully. And then just ideally stop wearing it. I know when I stopped wearing stretchy clothing, I mean, it's like I say, I'm not selling things. I mean, there's nothing within this video that I'm selling. It's not a sales pitch. It's not some kind of claim that's just out of an opinion. This is just truth. And so I don't want it to sound like I'm trying to like have a claim out of what, I want you to believe. I always say you don't need to believe me on anything. I just discuss universal truths to the best of my sinful ability as, a human being. We are all equal sinful humans. But what I'm saying is you will have more energy than you're used to, meaning you'll get back to the natural amount of energy the human being has in your own specific case. If you stop wearing stretchy clothing that the body is just fighting, and you'll sleep better. It's not a claim, you just will, because your body's not trying to fight clothing all night long. So things like that, you'll eat less, because a lot of times the reasons why we eat so much is because we feel like there's something wrong with the body, and eating is something that, intellectually we know helps us like have more energy, for example, and if we feel like we don't have energy, people start to pound food. Really, I mean, myself, I've done that within stretchy clothing. It just to try to get the body to, you feel like you need something because everything feels so unnatural, because it is, if it's stretchy. So that's stretchy clothing. Yeah. So when I discuss things at In The Image Clothing Company, not that I'm assuming, but like that's where the assumption is that we are not within stretchy clothing. And so I make so many bold claims that are true, but they seem very, very far and out of reach if you are within stretchy clothing, because of the way that your body is just struggling to operate. So my bold claims that sound so like bold are bold, but they are true. But it's coming from allowing the body to do the only thing that it actually does. We cannot tell our bodies what to do. You can try to do that all you want, is what I say, and you can have fun with your foam roller and stretching routines, or just allow the body to do the only thing that it actually does. Keep all the heels off your shoes, do the prerequisites that we discuss at In The Image Clothing Company, and stay within clothing that has no stretch. And the body will just do what it's designed to, because it was designed to do that. So I know that it can seem bold. I know that it can seem bold. It is bold. It's truth. Truth is bold, So with that being said, as I discussed, we are centered around the gospel of Jesus Christ here at In The Image Clothing Company. We do have In The Image Clothing Company podcast. Check that out, where you find your podcasts, and as well as, at least up until the last one that we did have, it was placed where these videos for In The Image Clothing Company are placed as well. So please just allow your body to do what it was designed to, because we don't have a say over it. We didn't create it, we didn't design it, we don't get to change its operation, we don't get to encapsulate it within something that is so bad for it and then expect it to do its natural thing. It just cannot. So anyway, like I said, it's the 1st of November 2024. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In The Image Clothing Company. And as you can tell within this, we are so much more than just a clothing company. So stick around if you'd like to. Share what we do here with the people that you do have around you, if you'd like to. Not necessarily for us, not for me as the founder, not to build a company for a company's sake, but because we do discuss universal truths here that do apply to everybody and help people. And it will, period and done, help everybody, ever. Because we're just discussing truth. So I think one thing I do need to say is I don't have to like cover myself and say it's not for our company's sake that you're sharing it. It really is. But this is why. Because we are giving truth to the world about the human body that's all the same within our differences, deformities, amputations, surgeries, whatever it is, okay. But the majority of our physical structural functions within the skeletal system of our bodies is the same across humans. And so these external things that we discuss affect human beings the same universally. So with that being said, when I do say to share this, it really is for the benefit of all people who could come in contact with it. And as we build In The Image Clothing Company, it will be this like central place to come back to for all people across the globe, where we can discuss truth of the body. We can learn more about the natural workings of the body. People can go less to doctors and just allow their body to work naturally, because that's all we have to do. Unless very major things come up here and there, injuries and stuff, you know, surgical procedures sometimes are necessary. I've had very major surgeries myself, 2 full open heart surgeries, as well as some other surgeries. I've gone through things, I understand. I've kind of been all over. I've seen things from all angles, and I really do have an understanding of what I'm discussing here, and an immense understanding of the natural human body. So that's what we're getting back to. We don't give exercises, we do not give stretches. We don't have to do those things to allow the natural function to occur. We just have to allow it. Okay? So, thank you.